So today marked the end of the open beta for the first Descendant, and today we're going to be talking about what I liked, what I didn't like, and everything I learned about this game. I was lucky enough to actually play this game a little bit earlier than the open beta went live on an early playtest server, and then shortly after that the open beta went live for everybody and I played it even more. I want to say I logged in probably over 40 to 50 hours if you want to include the early playtest and then the open beta. I played with all the Descendants, even some of the ultimate Descendants. I played with all the skills. I tested everything I could in the short amount of time that we had. And I tell you, the game is actually a lot of fun to play, but it is far from perfect. Now, I'm not going to hold anything back in this video. I'll tell you what I think about it, where I think they can improve, and hopefully what we see before the launch of this game, because I think that's going to be crucial if this game will succeed in the long term. Now, I will tell you, I was playing on PC, even though this is crossplay, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I did have it on ultra settings, and I typically was always running in 4K. Now, for a free-to-play game, this looked better than some of the games I paid for this year. And it definitely played better than some of the games I paid full price for this year. Now, before we jump into what this game reminds you of, I had so many people tell me it reminded them of Anthem, Outriders, Destiny, and even Warframe. And some said it was like if they all had a baby, the first Descendant is what they came up with. It does have a lot of things that might remind you of those other games, but the first Descendant definitely does a lot of things really well. Like the movement felt very fluid, very easy to learn, and it made for such a good experience. I would tell you, whether I was rolling, sprinting, using my grappling hook to get from point A to point B, I never felt like movement would be an issue in this game. And the more I played, the more I got used to the grappling system, rolling out of ways, evading these enemies, and it was amazing. Probably one of the best highlights of this beta was how good the movement for the first Descendant is. The combat in regards to gunplay felt amazing. I would say I used a ton of different weapons. I tried out the shotguns, I tried out the SMGs, the LMGs, the snipers, the scout rifles, and every weapon I played with was a fun experience. And for a game like this that's a looter sci-fi shooter, right? They really allowed players to play the way they want to play with whatever weapon they want to play with. And I got this comment a lot where people were saying they were having issues with ammo in this game. They felt that the ammo drops weren't enough, or the ammo capacity wasn't enough. And what I will tell you is, if you were running into that situation, I feel you weren't taking advantage of the amazing skills that each Descendant had. And if players tend to use their weapon more than they use their skills, obviously you're going to be running out of ammo. But if you use your skills the way they were supposed to be used, you could take out hordes of enemies, or at least damage them enough where you'd only have to shoot them a few times to kill them. And that's another bonus I loved about this game, were the skills. Every Descendant had such unique abilities that it was just fun to play with all of them. And I actually played with all of them, and that's what was cool about it. Using every different Descendant, trying out all their skills, really made for a really unique experience. And I think a lot of people are really going to love that about this game, especially as they introduce more and more Descendants as this game goes along. Now, for a looter shooter, there was loot everywhere. When you would finish missions, if you were full, you would literally just get so much loot that you just wouldn't know what to do with it. And I guess that's a good thing, because you can always go through it, see what you need, what you don't need. And since resources are very valuable in this game, because you use those resources to upgrade other materials, having this extra loot was never a bad thing. Now, I will tell you, another big highlight was being able to play with other players from other platforms. From PlayStation to Xbox to PC, it was one game, everybody got to play together, and that was actually an enjoyable experience. And while I did enjoy my time playing the open beta, it wasn't perfect, and there's a couple things that I noticed that I would love to see get fixed, and then one major concern I do have about this game. So let's get into that. So the first one, which I've seen a lot of people also complain about, is the open world being a little lifeless. If you're not in a mission, if you're not doing an activity, it's pretty much empty. Now, while it's kind of cool to be able to explore the world and like see all the cool things that they added here, and maybe when more players are in the servers and this game is fully live, you'll see other players just roaming around these areas. But again, at some point you would think that maybe if they added a few hordes of enemies here and there, it would just create a more engaging open world experience, even though this is technically kind of a sandbox, Destiny style open world where you have your little missions and you do it. Maybe having a world event, right, that draws everybody to a certain area could be a way for them to do that, right? That way you get like more players popping up in one area, and you kind of get that sense of, hey, there is more life out here in this game. Now, the AI voice for some of the characters like Seneca at our base was pretty bad, but then you had others where it sounded just fine. So it was just a hit or miss with this, and something they just need to tune before the official launch. Now, one thing that did come up, I saw a lot, and even I noticed it, was the enemies. Sometimes they felt a little underwhelming a little bit, but obviously I noticed as I did harder content, say I went to level 36 content, or even when I was doing the intercept battles, those obviously made you think about game mechanics. What are the mechanics for this boss? What causes him to kill everybody? What causes him to overcharge? What causes him to enrage? Like, you always had to think about what was the mission, right? So it always made you think. So these missions right here, 100% really enjoyed them. Felt like they were challenging, and they really made you think outside the box if you didn't know how to complete them. Now, obviously this was just an open beta and we only got to see 3 fields, so we don't really know where this will go. We don't know how challenging enemies will get, and that's just something we have to wait for the full release of the game to really truly find out. Now, this leads into one of 2 of my biggest concerns: end game loop. So we do know that obviously farming gear, farming modules, creating different builds is what this game is about, right? It's a looter shooter. You want to farm as many modules as you can so you become the most powerful descendant you can be, and certain modules make certain descendants stronger. But what about when you have those modules and you are powerful? Well, then that's where you go after those intercept battles, where you fight those Colossus bosses, which you had the Gravewalker, Executioner, Devourer, you had Dead Bride, Pyromaniac, Obstructor, Hanged Man, and you had Frostwalker. And in the open beta, you had people already completing Frostwalker at level 60, with our gear being capped at level 36. Our Descendant did get to level 40. And if level 40 is the cap for your Descendants, maybe future bosses they show us will be strong, right? Maybe these were all hard. Maybe the challenging ones will be hard to do. So you'll definitely have to spend more time grinding those characters and getting them stronger. Now, what if they added something like raids or dungeons that you could do with your friends, and they made them challenging where you couldn't do them solo? You would either have to matchmake or go in there with a team, and they would have really good loot in there. I think if you're going to have a PvE only game, which for the first Descendant seems to be going that route, well, you have to have some endgame content that will keep people coming back for more. The Colossus bosses are one of those ways, right? Their game mechanics make them unique. People want that challenging of beat them, but when you beat them, what's next? And that's where I think something like a dungeon, a raid that had raid mechanics would get people to keep coming back for more. So hopefully we see a little bit more about what the end game loop is. Remember, we only saw 3 fields, so we don't know what they have planned for the rest of the game. And my final biggest concerns is, how will microtransactions play a part in this game? Because you saw when you went to Anais, if you ever made a new Descendant in the first Descendant, there was always like a 12-hour timer, but you could actually spend credits to speed up that timer. And you would use one of the 4 currencies that are in the game. And when you typically have 4 currencies in a game, well, you typically have a way to buy one of those currencies. And I could see that probably being something in the full game. Instead of having to wait 12 hours to play with that new Descendant, you could unlock him immediately. Now, there was a way in the open beta to use credits to buy the pieces to start the process to make those Descendants. Now, could that be a thing? We kind of just got to wait and see. Ideally, I wish that they would stick to monetizing really cool looking skins, whether it's for whatever Descendant you're using, or even really cool gear dies, because I feel like there's just so much money right there and there's no pay to win aspect for that. It's just, hey, you got a really cool outfit, you pay money for it, right? Kind of like you see in some of the bigger titles like Fortnite and Warzone. So I can see them making enough money there that they wouldn't have to really put in a pay to win aspect. So we'll see what the developers decide to do, but that could be a big turn off for a lot of players if they see this game goes to a pay to win aspect. Now, to sum it all up, I think the first Descendants has a great foundation of what they're creating here, and I think it could be a very popular and very good game. I spent a lot of time playing the game and I was hooked. My friends who played it, they were hooked, and I can see a lot of other players really enjoying this style of game. Again, there are a few concerns, there are a few things I didn't like, there's a lot of things I loved about it, but overall for a free-to-play game, this was one of my favorite games I've played this year, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for the future. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I wanna know in the comments, who was your favorite Descendant and what did you think of the open beta? I'll see you guys in the next one, but until then, hey, Nothing But Skills is out. Take it easy, everybody.